Here's what's coming up on today's show.
I mean, let's say you were going to retire and you wanted to retire in April. Would you want to retire at the beginning of a recession?
No.
Is that something? Well, you don't know.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
We're going to talk about some questions you cannot answer this week on the radio, which sounds really odd.
Then why are you asking the
for
question?
a radio show, right?
That we can't answer?
That you're supposed to talk, but yet I'm going to ask you questions you can't answer. No, we're going to talk a little bit about, guys, how...
but we're very knowledgeable.
Very knowledgeable. How do you guys plan for some of the questions that don't really have any concrete answers just yet? And it'll make sense here in just a second. But before we get into that, how y'all doing?
Oh, we are busy people. We had a big crew at Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. My father was supposed to come. He's 95, if you haven't listened to us before. And so since COVID, he's kind of been a recluse. He hasn't really wanted to be around anything. And so he had committed to coming to Thanksgiving. That morning he calls up and says,
excited.
He says, I can't make it. And I'm like, oh, man. So take food over to him. He's struggling. Went to the doctor the next day. And Tuesday, he gets a pacemaker in. And so, at 95, he's not jumping rope or anything. So it's kind of a stressful time. And then, you have, we had clients over. I have some land and we went hunting. Yep. And that was fun, but a little stressful. Mm-hmm. And it's just been going like crazy. I mean, we're supposed to slow down, and guess what? No. It just speeds up.
Exactly. Exactly. How you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing good. Well, when the alarm went off at 4:10, I rolled over and said, honey, I'm glad it's you and not me going hunting. So, I'm a gatherer. He's a hunter. But then the grandkids spent the night. So we had a wonderful time with Naomi and Max, and we had fun stuff. So just like any good grandma would do, I said, we're having ham. And we're having, I guess, broccoli. Okay. And I said, which do you want, mashed potatoes or mac cheese? Well, Naomi says mashed potatoes. And Max says mac cheese. And what does the good grandma do? She makes both.
That's right.
Exactly.
And you know what?
Carved out.
That's right.
And Craig looked at me and he said, you did it for both of them, didn't you? I said, yeah. He just shook his head. And he's thinking, you never would have done that for our kids.
Sucker.
There you go. Well, that's because they're grandkids. And so there's my transition. That is a question you could answer, right?
It is.
You could certainly answer that one, so you made both of them. So with that said, I'm going to now go into the stuff so we can get into some financial stuff, which is why folks are here. But so, Craig, why don't you go ahead and tell me when the next market crash is going to happen? Because, you work in this industry, right? That's
I've got it all.
That's one of those questions y'all get, and nobody knows the answer.
Hang on. I got to dust off this crystal ball.
Okay,
1 minute.
All right.
Yeah. No way to know. I mean, who are we kidding? There's things you could look at. You've heard leading economic indicators or key indicators that could be looked at. So, there's 4 or 5 that I can mention and kind of talk to a little bit. Let's think first about GDP. You hear that, gross domestic product, but what the heck is it? In a short sentence or two, it's the overall value of goods and services that either an economy or, in the case of us, our economy produces. So the things that impact it: consumer spending, the investments that business make, government spending, stuff like that, GDP. And then you look at figures from the Department of Labor, like employment figures, monthly number of jobs created, private sector jobs versus government jobs. Certain industries, are they hiring or not? And then if you look at the unemployment numbers, and that number is low, that means not many people are not employed, that usually indicates a strong economy. And then somebody's going to scratch their head and say, but it also may indicate a rising inflation rate. So it's kind of like, oh gosh, how do you win in this idea? Mm-hmm. Industrial production, there's one. It measures the output for these manufacturing-based industries. So somebody that makes something, how much output are they putting out? Goods and services for both consumers and businesses, capacity utilization in factory sectors. This type of stuff, these eggheads look at all day long. I hate to just say it, but it's true. I just read the research. Consumer spending, how much do we spend? So it's been Cyber Monday and Black Friday, and man, the numbers, like I saw something about Cyber Monday and it was like 12 or 13 billion in a single day spent. So somebody's got some money somewhere.
Well, Craig, I've been dialing on my phone.
She's
I'll
been
tell you that.
That's right. We kept the economy going.
I'll tell you what's interesting about that, though, right? You see a lot of videos over this past weekend from the holiday, and the stores are not crowded. Remember like that when it used to be like literally you'd see people knocking people over and all that stuff? That's not happening because they're...
No, they're not.
I saw in the news yesterday where people are running there really fast. And they run really fast out with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. But
Don't go there,
it's definitely
Craig.
smaller than...
That was snatch and grab. Don't go there.
Yeah.
But the online stuff definitely much, much bigger, right?
Yeah.
But consumer spending, people are spending money. That's honestly, about 2/3 of the gross domestic product number that we look at. It provides information on inflation versus prices. And basically it shows how consumers are spending and how much they have to spend on certain items. So some of them are necessities, just like when we do financial planning. How much of the must-haves do we have? How much does that cost? And then the stuff that you want to have, different type of idea. Mm-hmm. Inflation, the general price of stuff. Is it too much? Is it overheating the economy? Is inflation low? Which the answer is no right now.
I was going to say, I can answer that first one. The general price of stuff is it's high.
Potential economic recession for the recession is low type thing. So you've got a lot to look at.
Yeah, I was going to say you've thrown out a lot of things and my head's spinning, and I'm in this every day, not in the investment side of it like you are, but so people listening, all these things, market crash, all these indices that you're throwing out there, how do you use it? What do you do? How is that useful?
Well, you can get a feel for how you might position.
What the heck?
So, let's say you were going to retire, and you wanted to retire in April. Would you want to retire at the beginning of a recession? Is that something? Well, you don't know. I wouldn't. Because you can position your money in such a way where you have safe money that you're going to draw on for maybe the next 1 to 2 years. So that's not a panic item. If you were going to reposition money in your 401k, would you rather reposition that money with the markets down or reposition with the markets up? And I'm saying if you get to buy stocks when they're down, well, that's the good stuff. If you get to buy interest rates when they're high, that's good stuff. But if you're just kind of not understanding how the different bucketing part of your portfolio needs to work, maybe that's how we sit down and talk. So these indicators, it's kind of voodoo. It's kind of crystal ball because at the end of it, nobody knows. But you can see that interest rates are high. You can see that inflation is high. You can see that houses, at least the prices of houses, have peaked. They might not be lower, but they're not really going a whole lot higher recently. We have a lot of friends in the real estate business. So as you're looking at what's going on in front of you, it helps you to design your portfolio. It helps you to make decisions about how am I going to draw money out of accounts? How am I going to decide on when I turn Social Security on? Do I have options to take my money or just options to take a payment from my pension? So all of these things go in together and help us to be able to build a plan that's forward looking.
So bottom line, you really don't have to know when the market crash is going to come, but you can prepare and build a portfolio to weather whatever is in front of you.
Well, because you want to retire in any economy regardless of what's going on, because you can't control
what's in front of you.
Right.
So bottom line, you don't need to know when it's going to come. You just need to build and have that flexibility in your plan.
It's important. Yeah. Right. Sometimes you look at it and say, how come I've got so much money in the safe side? If the market's going up, and you might scratch your head. And then the answer is you need that money for the next 1 or 2 years, perhaps, to spend. Maybe that's in your IRA, not in your taxable money, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to take this money out of the IRA. I can't afford for that to move up or down. I've got that I need that stuff to be there when I draw down on it. And the first 2 to 4 years of retirement, I promise you, are the most important times not to lose a lot of money due to withdrawals and a decline in the market. So the portfolio design, very important.
Craig, this one's probably fairly easy. This probably got a little easier to answer. What's healthcare going to look like in about 20 years from a cost standpoint?
Oh, boy. Listen to you. That's easier.
Yeah. Up. I would say up.
You think?
Just a
well,
baby.
I mean, technology is improving. We just talked about my father.
Right.
He went in, they put a pacemaker in. My brother's a doctor, Eric Moser's a doctor in High Point. And so he tells me where to look to see when this pacemaker is pacing my dad on the monitor. Man,
Right.
it was doing a lot. I'm like,
Right.
every one of those is making my dad's heart beat. And he goes, yeah.
What was his heart doing?
It really wasn't
resting.
doing much apparently, and he needed it. So
Right.
healthcare. Historically, the cost of healthcare has outpaced the inflation rate. So if you look at what it costs for medical care now versus 20, 40 years ago, and I mean, all of us, that are looking close to retirement have seen those years. It's like, wow, stuff costs a lot more. I watch some of these movies and the doctor takes the chickens and blah, 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 blah. That day's gone, I think. So
Right.
what is it going to cost? One of the predictions is when you enter into retirement, you need about $260,000 to $300,000 committed for future health care costs.
But what about
Wow.
the myth, Craig, that people think as soon as I get on Medicare,
Yeah.
I'm on easy street because they're going to pay for everything?
It's a myth.
Right.
Trust me,
Yeah.
I know.
I mean,
it's not bad. I'm not saying Medicare is bad and the supplementals and all of the different types of health care you can get once you are on Medicare, but the cost of things is not going down. So having a financial plan, a retirement plan that says, okay, I have thought about this and I have put that into my income goal. And here's the thing that blows that up: long-term care. It is the hardest thing to get people to talk about. But if it happens to you or you have had experience with a family member and have seen how much it chews up their savings and investments, you got to think about how you're going to plan for that. You don't have to say, I'm going to buy insurance, but you need to look at the numbers that you have. I've accumulated this much money. Here's my prediction for what long-term care will cost, say, in 10 or 15 years, and say, okay, I can handle this out of cash flow and the money that I have, or this would be devastating. I would run out of money, or even worse, we run out of money and one of you is still alive and kicking and doing really good. These are things that when you do financial planning, we look at. We pull that data together and give you a look into the future. It's not real, but we're saying this. If this occurs, here's the potential impact to the future of your money and the ability to pay your bills.
Yeah.
Craig, what about, the tax rates? Where are they going to be 3 presidents from now? Because people are in retirement 20, 30 years. So a lot of administrative and legislative changes happening during that time. So let's talk a little bit about tax
I say we
rates.
can make a pretty good guess on this one too, right? Up.
Let me get my crystal ball back out.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. When you think about taxes, you've got to look at what the history did. So back during a long time, from 1964 until around 1980, the tax rate started at 14%. And they escalated up very quickly, and the top tax bracket was 70%. You go, go and look.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. So if you say earned, I don't know, in retirement, $110,000, $120,000 a year was your income goal, which you could hit, and you're taking most of that money out of an IRA, guess what? All of that income is taxable. What will be the rate that is charged for you to access that money? I know this number, so I'm going to use it. If you needed $100,000 net out of your retirement account and you needed, you're going to pull it out of the IRA, you needed to keep it, and you were in a 25% overall tax bracket, it would cost you $133,000 or about $33,000 in taxes to keep your $100,000. And it's like, man, that's a lot. That's 25%. What if it were higher? We're saving this money now, and I will argue that the tax schedule we're in is about as low as you will ever see it.
Yeah, they're on sale right now. Taxes are on sale.
Right. So when you start thinking about where am I going to save my money for the future, you can't really listen to your parents. I mean, not your older ones. If you're my age and you listen to my dad, he has not a penny in an IRA. Why? Because IRAs and the qualified plans really didn't start until about 81, somewhere right in that range. And so those older groups didn't have money there. They had money outside. They invested in stocks or bonds, and they just bought them. They bought real estate, nothing inside the retirement accounts. And now there's like $5, $6, $7 trillion stored up in IRAs and 401ks. The government's going to make their money off of that, either now or when you're forced to take that money out.
We just
Tax planning is very important.
And we just had, actually, as a radio caller called in, and one of them has like $2 million in a 401k pre-tax. There's also IRA money of $1 million. So we're looking right now, and they're fairly young. We're looking at strategically tax planning over the next few years, so they're not forced to take distributions when they're 73 and have exorbitant, costs, in retirement because taxes. The other thing that people don't know is we talk about the tax rate, but there are other ways for the government to confiscate your money, not just taxes, right? They started out with Social Security was just your money. Then they said 50% would be taxable at certain income levels. Then they raised it to 85% at certain income levels that it would be taxable. So gradually they're taking some of the benefit and making it a taxable item. Right. Medicare, B and D. You are paying more, a surcharge, if you make more money. So there are other ways to be penalized by having higher income. Yeah. And so, who makes the rules?
You're depressing me here.
Right? So you really in our plans when we sit down with you, we don't want to set a depressing conversation, but you have to be prepared, right?
Exactly.
To have a successful retirement, you want to be prepared. You want to know what do people in the know, people who do this every day, what can we bring to the table that you might not have thought about to make sure that you really are prepared for retirement? And I think that's the benefit of working with a financial professional and one who specializes in retirement as we do.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jennifer, because it's easy enough to build the money, right? I mean, and you could even make the argument that maybe even distributing it to yourself wouldn't be that complicated, right? But you guys,
right.
we were joking in between the breaks that you can Google anything on YouTube. We was like, at what point is it going to be a heart transplant or something?
Right.
But all the little extra things that you guys do and that really goes into the financial services world, that's where it gets kind of complicated, right? How to be efficient with taxes, how to handle health care, how to handle long-term care, how to handle Social Security, and how they all play and work together. That's really where I think the massive value comes into play. And of course, I'll make this last one easy for you, Craig. If we all came with a milk stamp, like the best used by,
stamp?
the
Did
best.
Did you say milk stamp?
What do they call that? The milk date. That's it. Whatever it is, right? On the carton of milk. Yeah, milk stamp. That's what I'm calling it. I coined that term.
When I'm going to expire.
When I'm going to expire.
When you need to throw me out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Jennifer would not throw you out. I had 12-year-old Jell-O, so it just would not work.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But your job would be easy if you knew that, right?
Right.
Well, it sure would be easier to plan. People say, when should I start my Social Security? And I'd say, well, I just need the month and the year that you're going to pass away, and I can tell you the exact best choice to make. But I get this eye look at it's like, well, I don't know when I'm going to die. Guess what? I got that. So you have to make your best plans. If you plan for, let's say, 95 years old and you only live to 85, well, if your plan was set up for 95, you're sure as heck going to make it at 85, right?
Right.
But if you're going to look at this thing and say, I'm running out at 85, and then you live to 95 like my father, okay. I mean, that's a problem because
that's a rough last 10 to 12 years.
That's right. They do what we're experiencing now. People move in. So your mom doesn't need the money.
No.
Let me preface that. But we're a sandwich generation right now. We have one child that came back from Salt Lake, so he's temporarily in the house, and turn around and we have mom at the house as well too, and so I mean it's a pretty full house. It costs more money because there's food there, there's more electricity, there's stuff moving around in there,
Sure.
dog food, things like that. So you have to do planning and say, what's realistic for me? So both of us have parents that have lived a long time. Take a look at that and say, if I were to live until, and you finish the sentence, can I make my money live as long as I do? What about the medical cost? What about the tax cost? What about all of these other things that we worry about every day so that you don't have to? That's the bottom line here.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.